My ex-girlfriend once said I was just for fun after 5 years together, while her ex was marriage material. 6 months later, her cousin was the one promising me forever. My name is Nolan, and for a long time I was sure my life path was already laid out. I had been with Celine for 5 years. We'd shared the same small city apartment for 3. We split the rent, had a shared bank account for bills, and her family brought me to every holiday as if I'd already married in. Her mom, Lorraine, liked to introduce me as my future son-in-law whenever we showed up with a pie or a salad. She'd say it with a proud little smile, and Celine would squeeze my hand under the table, grinning like the joke was obvious but the ending was inevitable. We talked about marriage all the time. Sometimes seriously, sometimes with half-jokes about color themes and guest lists. Whenever I said, "So, any timeline on that ring?" Celine would laugh and say, "Relax, I want to do it right. I need to save for the ring you deserve. The proposal has to be perfect." I believed her. Why wouldn't I? 5 years of building a life together, learning each other's rhythms, mixing our furniture and our routines. It felt like marriage was only a formality we hadn't gotten around to yet. Everything stayed safe and predictable until her cousin Iris moved back from working overseas. I'd heard about Iris for years, how she was always traveling, picking up languages, sending photos from mountain ranges and crowded street markets in countries I'd only seen on screens. Celine talked about her with a mix of fondness and mild exasperation, like Iris was the adventurous one who never sat still long enough to grow roots. When Iris came home, Celine planned a big cousin's night out. The idea was drinks, food, and catching up. I was supposed to go, but an issue blew up at work and my manager called me in last minute. I apologized to Celine over and over, promising I'd make it up to her. She kissed my cheek and said, "Don't worry. It's just family. I'll be home early." She did not come home early. When she finally walked through the door, it was almost 4 in the morning. Her eyeliner was smudged, her hair smelled like bar smoke and someone else's cologne, and her laugh was a little too loud when she dropped her bag by the couch. "Long night?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light. "It was fun," she said, kicking off her shoes. "You should have seen Iris. She hasn't changed at all. She fell onto the bed fully dressed and was asleep before I could decide whether to be annoyed or just tired." I told myself everybody deserved a wild night, especially after a reunion. I turned off the light and tried not to think about the early part. The next day, Iris added me on social media. At first it was just a follow, then likes on old photos, then small comments on my posts. A joke about my terrible attempt at homemade pizza. A reaction to a picture of our cat sleeping in the laundry basket. Then she sent a meme that was so specifically tailored to my sense of humor it caught me off guard. I showed Celine. She shrugged. "That's Iris. She talks to everyone. Extrovert to the bone." I thought it was nice that she was making an effort with me. It felt like being invited into the family from a different angle, not just as Celine's boyfriend, but as my own person. 2 weeks later, Celine and I went to a backyard barbecue at her friend Daria's house. There were folding chairs on the patio, paper plates bending under too much food, and a Bluetooth speaker playing songs just a little too loud. People mingled between the kitchen and the yard, plates in hand, drinks sweating in the heat. At some point, Daria asked if I could grab more drinks from the fridge. I went inside, glad for the brief break from the noise. The kitchen window over the sink was open, and voices from the patio floated clearly in. I wasn't trying to listen. I was halfway to the fridge when I heard my name. "So," Daria said, teasing, "when are you finally going to marry Nolan? We're all waiting for the big announcement. My husband has a whole timeline drawn up already." I froze with my hand on the refrigerator door. Celine laughed in that easy, confident way that usually charmed everyone around her. "Marriage is for men you build something real with," she said. "Nolan's a little different." Something in my chest twinged. "Different how?" someone else asked, amused. "He's fun," Celine replied. "Comfortable. You know. Good to have around. But not exactly husband material." They laughed, like it was a harmless joke. My grip tightened on the fridge handle. "What does that even mean?" another voice pushed. "There are guys you date," Celine said, "and guys you marry. The one I wanted to marry was in college. Elias. Remember him?" She laughed again, softer now, almost nostalgic. "He was the real thing. I still check his social media every day. He's the one who got away." Silence, then an impressed whistle. "So what about Nolan?" "Nolan makes life easier," she said. "He pays bills on time, he gets along with my family, he doesn't cause drama. It's nice. But if Elias ever decides he's ready to settle down?" She gave a short laugh. I'm not missing that train again. The laughter this time hit like cold water. Someone joked, "You'd better hope Nolan doesn't figure out you're just running out the clock on him." Another round of laughter. I could almost see them exchanging looks, nudging shoulders, treating my life like a funny anecdote. They joked about how I probably dropped hints about rings, how Lorraine called me future son-in-law, and how Celine was keeping her options open. They said the words casually, like I was a safe bet they could cash out later. I stood in the kitchen, staring at the fridge I'd never managed to open, the hum of the motor suddenly loud in my ears. 5 years of shared holidays. 5 years of doing her dishes when she was tired, of fixing the loose cabinet door, of driving her to doctor's appointments, of being the one she called when her car made a strange sound. 5 years of picturing a future that now felt like it was drawn on fogged glass, one swipe away from disappearing. To her, I was a placeholder. A comfortable chair she could sink into while she waited for someone else to invite her into a life. I don't know how long I stayed there. The voices outside blurred into a low background buzz. My heart wasn't racing, it felt more like it had dropped into my stomach and refused to move. At some point, I remembered why I'd come in. I opened the fridge, grabbed a case of drinks, and walked back outside. The air felt thicker. The faces around the table looked the same as before, laughing, talking, reaching for chips, but they were all slightly out of focus. Celine caught my eye and smiled, the same way she always did. I set the drinks down, made a small joke to someone on my left, and sat in the empty chair beside her. She rested her hand on my thigh like nothing had changed. I let her. No one could see what had just cracked inside my chest. The fracture line was mine alone. That night, when we got home, Celine collapsed on the couch, scrolling through photos from the barbecue. I watched her from the hallway, my mind replaying her words not as sounds, but as a cold, simple truth. There are guys you date, and guys you marry. I was the first, standing in for the second. When she finally went to bed, I lay awake beside her, staring at the ceiling. The apartment was filled with the quiet sounds of our shared life, the hum of the fridge, the ticking of the bathroom fan, her measured breathing. My heart ached, but it wasn't the kind of pain that makes you cling harder. It was the heavy, tired ache of realizing you'd been holding your breath for years, waiting for someone to choose you without conditions. Around 3 in the morning, I realized something else. I believed her more in that overheard conversation than in every "I love you" she'd said in the last year. The next day, I started changing small things. Not because I wanted to punish her, but because I needed to see what our life looked like without me constantly trying to prove my value. I stopped doing her laundry with mine. I stopped refilling her prescriptions when she forgot. I stopped reminding her about appointments, birthdays, deadlines. When she asked, "Hey, did you reschedule my dentist?" I said, "No, I figured you'd call," and turned back to my laptop. She frowned but didn't push. That was who she was, used to being cushioned by my effort, surprised when it pulled back, but not enough to examine why. Meanwhile, Iris kept messaging me. At first it was an occasional meme. Then short conversations about music, about travel, about the strange satisfaction of folding a fitted sheet correctly. When she asked about my work, she didn't zone out halfway through my answer. She followed up on things I'd mentioned weeks before, the difficult client, the Friday deadline, the small promotion I'd received only for Celine to say, half distracted, "Congrats, babe," before changing the subject. Iris wrote a full message about how proud she was of me. It was longer than anything Celine had said about my job in months. I felt guilty for how much that meant. It took me a while to see it clearly. I wasn't falling for the attention. I was just remembering what it felt like when someone actually saw me, not just what I did for them. 2 weeks after the barbecue, Iris sent me a message that made everything tip a little further. "Feels strange," she wrote, "that you've been with our family this long and we barely know each other. Want to grab coffee sometime? Just to fix that gap." I stared at the screen, my heart pounding in a slow, heavy rhythm. There was nothing objectively wrong with saying yes. I was still Celine's boyfriend. Iris was her cousin. It could be harmless. But I knew, in that quiet, honest place where you can't lie to yourself, that it meant more. Not romance. Not yet. Just a crossroads. I typed, "Sure. Coffee sounds good." Then I put my phone down and wondered when exactly my life had started breaking off into different possible futures. I didn't know yet which one I'd choose. I only knew this: staying exactly where I was no longer felt like loyalty. It felt like erasing myself slowly, 1 year at a time. Our first coffee felt nothing like a date, and exactly like a turning point. We met at a little corner cafe near my office, the kind with uneven wooden tables and too many plants on the windowsill. I got there early, thinking I'd use the time to answer emails. Instead, I just sat there, staring at the door and rehearsing neutral topics in my head. Iris walked in with a gust of cold air and a quick smile. I wasn't sure if you liked sweet stuff or not, she said, setting 2 cups on the table. So I got 1 regular latte and 1 with way too much caramel. We can trade if I guessed wrong. I laughed. You guessed right. I'm a menace with sugar. Her shoulders relaxed a fraction. Good. I hate suffering through a plain drink out of politeness. We ended up talking for 3 hours. Iris asked about my job and didn't act like it was background noise. She wanted to know how I got into my field, what I liked about it, what stressed me out. When I mentioned a project Celine had brushed off as boring client stuff, Iris leaned in and asked follow-up questions like it mattered. She told me about her time overseas, not as a highlight reel, but as a series of stories about missed flights, language mix-ups, and the loneliness that comes with living out of a suitcase. I realized quickly that her feed only showed the beautiful parts, the rest, she saved for real conversations. At one point, she said, I'm impressed by how you handle Celine's family. My aunt can be intense. And my grandma needs a lot of patience. You never seem irritated. You just quietly take care of things. My throat went tight. I hadn't realized how starved I was for someone to notice the invisible parts of what I did. On my way home, I told myself it was just a good conversation with someone who actually listened. Nothing more. But coffee became a weekly thing. Then twice a week. Then lunch on days our schedules lined up. We messaged about small stuff, songs we liked, weird things our coworkers said, the micro-annoyances of adulthood. It never felt like flirting, exactly. Just, easy. The more Iris listened, the more obvious the silence at home became. One evening, after almost 2 months of this quiet overlap, emotionally gone from my relationship but technically still in it, we sat on a park bench with takeout containers resting on our knees. The sky was turning purple at the edges. Iris had been fidgeting with her fork for a while, not eating much. Finally, she set the container aside. Nolan, she said, I need to be honest about something. And if you want me to back off after this, I will. My heart started beating too loudly in my ears. Okay. She stared at her hands, then at me. I was there the night of Daria's barbecue. I didn't hear everything, but I heard enough. The part where Celine talked about Elias being the one and you being temporary. Her jaw clenched. I wanted to say something then. I should have. I swallowed. It's not your fault, she said it. No, she said quietly. But it feels wrong to watch you carry it alone. She took a breath, words careful but firm. I've tried to stay out of this because she's my cousin. I told myself it wasn't my place. But watching you show up for her and her family, knowing she talks about you like you're just the safe option until something better comes along, it makes me angry. For you. The air between us felt suddenly heavy, but not uncomfortable. I care about you, Nolan, she said. More than I probably should. It started a long time ago, honestly. I blinked. A long time ago? She gave a small, embarrassed laugh. Yeah. That first big family dinner years back. Remember when Grandma Coralie's walker got stuck on the rug? You were the only one who stood up first. You didn't make a show of it. You just helped her, checked if she needed anything, and sat back down like it was nothing. I noticed. I remembered that night. I remembered thinking no one did. I know you're still with Celine, Iris added quickly. I'm not asking you to do anything reckless. I just couldn't keep watching this without telling you I think you deserve more than being somebody's placeholder. Her words didn't feel like a temptation. They felt like a mirror. I went home that night with my decision already made, even if I hadn't said it out loud yet. Celine was at the kitchen table, laptop open, one leg bouncing to music only she could hear. She glanced up when I came in. Hey, she said. You're late. Work? Yeah, I said. My voice sounded calm even though my pulse was racing. We need to talk. She paused her music but didn't close the laptop. That sounds serious. It is, I said. I sat opposite her so she would have to look at me. I heard what you said at Daria's barbecue. Through the kitchen window. About Elias being the one you'd marry. About me being just for fun. Convenient. Her fingers stilled on the keyboard. Color drained from her face. You were eavesdropping on girl talk, she snapped, then winced, as if she'd realized how that sounded. I went inside to get drinks, I replied, keeping my voice level. The window was open. I didn't go looking for anything. I just stopped pretending I can't hear you anymore. She shut the laptop now. Nolan, come on. You know how we talk when it's just us. I was venting. Daria was pushing. I panicked and said something dumb. It didn't mean anything. It sounded like it meant a lot, I said. You said you check his social media every day. You said you're waiting for him to be ready. You called me a safe option. She dragged a hand through her hair, irritated. I was exaggerating. Do you really think I don't care about you? We've been together for 5 years. We live together. My mom loves you. Why are you throwing all of that away over one conversation you weren't even supposed to hear? If I'm not just a placeholder, I said quietly, then marry me. Now. Today. No big proposal, no perfect timeline. You say you already see me as your future. Prove it. Her mouth dropped open. That's manipulative, she said. You know I have a plan. I don't want to rush into something huge just because you're insecure. I'm not ready. 5 years, I said. You're not ready after 5 years, but you're ready to keep me here while you think about your ex? That's not fair, she shot back. Relationships are complicated. Feelings are complicated. You can't give me an ultimatum like this and then say I'm the one being selfish. I studied her face. There was frustration there, fear, pride, but not the kind of clarity I needed. I'm not giving you an ultimatum, I said finally. I'm describing the reality. I won't stay with someone who openly said I'm just the comfortable middle chapter. I'm not going to argue with you about what you really meant. You showed me. Her eyes flashed. So that's it? You're just leaving? I'm choosing not to be the person you settle for while waiting for someone else, I answered. You deserve to chase whatever version of love you want. I deserve to be with someone who doesn't flinch when I say, forever. She stared at me for a long time, breathing shallowly. Then she stood up abruptly, chair scraping against the floor. Fine, she said. If you want to blow up our life over something that happened when I was annoyed and oversharing, that's on you. Don't blame me later when you realize you walked away from someone who actually loved you. The word loved landed differently now that I'd heard what she said when she thought I wasn't listening. I packed that night. Folding my clothes into suitcases and boxes felt surreal. Every hoodie, every book, every mug we'd bought together turned into a small decision. Does this belong to me, to us, or to a life that no longer exists? Celine moved between anger and silence. Once, she stood in the doorway and said, we can fix this. We can go to therapy. We can reset. I paused, waiting for the part where she'd say, you're the one I want. I was wrong. She never did. I moved into a small, temporary studio across town the next day. A friend from work helped me with the bigger items. I told Iris I was leaving, but I didn't let her help that day. I needed one line to be completely clean. I ended my relationship before anything else began. Celine called and texted every few hours at first. Some messages were sad, some were accusatory, some were nostalgic, reminding me of trips we took, inside jokes we had. The pattern was familiar, but something in me had shifted too far to be pulled back by it. I answered one last time. I'm not coming back, I wrote. You are allowed to want Elias, or that version of love. But I'm allowed not to be your backup plan. She didn't respond to that message. Just sent a sad face emoji hours later. Then, gradually, the text slowed. Iris gave me space for a while. She sent the occasional, how are you holding up, and respected it when my answers were short. A month later, she asked, can I be brave for a second, followed by a nervous emoji. I replied, go ahead. I still have feelings for you, she wrote. I've tried to ignore them because of Celine, but you're single now, and I don't want to pretend I don't care. If you're not ready, I'll wait, or we can just stay friends. I just don't want you thinking I don't see you. I stared at the message a long time, heart beating steadily, not chaotically. I care about you too, I wrote back, fingers shaking. I don't want to rush something new just to fill a gap. But if you're willing to go slow, I'd like to see where this goes. We became official in the quietest way, not with a grand announcement, but with the two of us sitting on my tiny couch, deciding together that this was real. I don't want to hide, Iris said. But I also don't want to hurt anyone unnecessarily. We have to be honest with the family. Even if it's messy, I agreed. Messy arrived sooner than I expected. Lorraine invited us to a big family dinner a few weeks later. It was the first one since the breakup. I told Iris I was fine with her holding my hand in public. I meant it, but my stomach still knotted as we walked up the familiar front steps. The dining room was full. It smelled like roasted chicken, herbs, and a little bit of tension. We took seats next to each other. Iris's hand found mine under the table, fingers warm and sure. A low hum of conversation filled the room as platters passed back and forth. Celine sat 2 chairs down on the opposite side, her posture stiff. She avoided looking directly at us. Everything might have stayed politely strained if no one had mentioned my name. One of the uncles made a light comment about how nice it is everyone's getting along, and something in Celine snapped. Her chair screeched backward so hard it made everyone flinch. Her water glass toppled, spilling across the white tablecloth. "So we're all just fine with this," she said, voice shaking. "Nobody has a problem with the fact that my ex-boyfriend is now dating my cousin?" The room went silent. She pointed directly at us. "You left me and jumped straight to her. You didn't even wait. You stabbed me in the back and then walked into my family like you did nothing wrong." Iris tensed beside me. Her fingers tightened around mine. Lorraine looked between the three of us, her expression torn. "Celine, please, not at the table." "No, they need to hear it," Celine insisted. Her eyes were bright with hurt and anger. "He walked out after one fight and then went straight to Iris like she was waiting in the wings. How is that okay? How is this not betrayal?" Everyone stared at me like I held some crucial missing piece. I pushed my chair back and stood, not quickly, but firmly. My voice, when it came, was steady. "I didn't leave you because of Iris," I said. "I left because you told your friends I was a placeholder. That you were waiting for Elias to be ready. I stayed quiet, packed my things, and moved out. Only after a clean break, after a month on my own, did anything start with Iris." "That's your version," Celine snapped. "Convenient." "You know it's true," I replied, more gently than I felt. "You're allowed to be hurt. But you're not allowed to rewrite the order of what happened." Celine opened her mouth, ready to fire back, but another voice cut in. "Enough." It was her younger brother, Callum. He rarely spoke up at these dinners, usually content to sit at the edge of the chaos and scroll his phone. Now he was standing, eyes hard. "Celine, you treated him like a given for years," he said. "You told me yourself you weren't sure you ever wanted to marry him. You talked about Elias like he was some great lost love and described Nolan as comfortable. You don't get to act shocked when he believed you." Celine stared at him, stunned. "You're taking his side?" "I'm taking the side of reality," Callum said. "You can't spend years calling something temporary and then be outraged when it ends." He turned to me, his expression softening. "You were always good to Mom. To Grandma. To all of us. I should have said something sooner." Emotion flooded my throat so quickly I could only nod. Lorraine stood up then, voice trembling. "That's enough for now. This is a family dinner, not a public trial. Celine, sit down." "Nolan, Iris," she stopped, took a breath, and then looked at me. "Nolan, would you come with me to the kitchen for a moment?" Iris squeezed my hand once before letting go. "I'll be right here," she murmured. In the kitchen, the lights felt too bright. The smell of roasted chicken was stronger without the noise of the dining room. Lorraine turned to me, her eyes already glassy. "Tell me what happened," she said. "Not the version from Posts or Whispers. Your version. Please." So I did. I told her about the open kitchen window at Daria's. About husband material and Elias, about being comfortable and convenient. About the way my whole life had shifted in a single overheard conversation. About giving Celine a chance to say something different and hearing instead that she wasn't ready. As I spoke, Lorraine's face crumpled, not in anger at me, but in grief. "I thought you two were it," she whispered. "I thought you were the one who would finally anchor her. I've been picturing your wedding for years. I just assumed." She trailed off, pressing a hand to her mouth. "I didn't leave because I stopped caring," I said quietly. "I left because I finally believed what she'd been telling everyone else. I couldn't be the person she used to pass time until something better came along." Tears spilled over and ran down Lorraine's cheeks. "I am so sorry," she said. "I didn't know. You have been good to us. To me. To my mother. We should have seen more. Asked more questions. Instead we just took you for granted too." She stepped forward and wrapped her arms around me in a tight, trembling hug. "You didn't deserve that. And if Iris sees what my daughter didn't, I will not stand in the way of that. You hear me?" My own eyes burned. Out in the dining room, a door slammed. The faint, familiar sound of Celine's car starting drifted through the window. A moment later, tires squealed on the driveway. For a second, guilt rose up, old habit, automatic. Then I thought of that night at Daria's, the casual way she'd written me off. I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt justified. Lorraine pulled back, wiping her eyes. "I'm going to talk to her," she said. "Really talk to her. Not as her cheerleader, but as her mother. In the meantime, I want you to know this, your place in this family is not solely defined by whether you're with Celine. You've earned it by who you are. Thank you, I managed. We walked back into the dining room together. The room was quiet. Celine's chair sat empty, pushed back from the table. People picked at their food, unsure what to say. Callum gave me a tiny nod. Grandma Coralie reached over as I passed and patted my hand with her thin fingers. I'm glad you're still here, she said softly. You've always been good to me. I took my seat next to Iris. Her hand found mine under the table again, and this time, there was no guilt. Just the steady warmth of someone who had seen the worst parts of the story and still chose to stay. That night, as we drove home, I realized something that made my chest loosen a little. Leaving Celine hadn't made me the villain. It had simply revealed the truth everyone had been skirting around for years. And slowly, piece by piece, the people who mattered were choosing to stand on the side of that truth with me. The days after that dinner felt strangely quiet. Not silent, Celine made sure of that, but quiet in the way a room feels after someone has finished shouting. The echo was still there, but the worst of the noise had passed. The first wave was messages. Celine texted me late that night. We didn't have to do that in front of everyone. I stared at the screen for a moment and put the phone down without answering. In the morning, there were 7 more. I can't believe you let Callum talk to me like that. After everything I've done for you. You made me look like some kind of monster. I was hurt. That's normal. You really left me for my cousin after one argument. You'll regret this. But I still love you. We can fix it if you stop this now. The messages continued all week, swinging like a pendulum between remorse and blame. I miss you. You abandoned me. I can't sleep. You destroyed our future. I hope Iris is worth it. I know she's just a phase. Please talk to me. You don't even care what you did to me. I responded once. I'm sorry you're hurting. But I didn't do this to you. Your choices did. After that, the messages got meaner. She called me selfish, ungrateful, disloyal. She hinted that she might show up to talk, like that was something she could just decide. I took screenshots of everything and saved them in a folder I named quietly, just in case. Then I blocked her number. The instant quiet on my phone felt like fresh air after being stuck in a stuffy room too long. Of course, the quiet didn't last. Celine shifted to her favorite stage, social media. She never used my name. She never tagged me or Iris. But it didn't take much to connect the dots. Posts about family betrayal. About people you build everything with who throw it away for something new and shiny. Quotes about how loyalty is rare and you never really know someone until they leave you. She reposted articles about emotional infidelity and added vague captions. Some people swear they never cheated, but you know better. Mutual friends sent screenshots, sometimes with long messages attached. Is this about you? Are you okay? This seems unfair. I learned to reply with variations of, I'm fine, thanks. I don't plan on answering publicly. The truth didn't need a hashtag. Iris refused to look at any of it. I believe your version, she said simply. I don't need to read the one where you're a villain to know it's not the whole story. Her certainty grounded me when the old guilt tried to creep back in. One Saturday, my best friend from work, Mira, showed up at my place carrying takeout and a roll of packing tape. You still have half your stuff in boxes, she announced, walking in without waiting for an invitation. We're fixing that today. And I'm asking you things you've been avoiding. I laughed weakly. I didn't know this came with a project manager. It does, she said, handing me a container. Eat. Then confess. We sat on the floor between half-unpacked boxes. She pointed a plastic fork at me. I kept my mouth shut for years, she said. But I need you to know this, I never liked how Celine treated you. Not once. I blinked. You never said anything. Because you were in it, she replied. And I didn't want to be that friend tearing down your partner. But I watched you bend your entire schedule around her. I watched her cancel on you at the last minute and expect you to be grateful for whatever time she gave. I watched you light up about a project at work and watched her change the subject before you finished one sentence. My chest tightened. Why didn't you say something anyway? She sighed. Because until you were ready to see it, you would have defended her and resented me. It had to come from you, or in this case, from an open kitchen window at the worst possible moment. I looked around at the boxes, at the half-made life scattered in pieces. I feel stupid, I admitted. Like I should have seen it sooner. Don't, she said. She didn't treat you badly enough all at once. She did it slowly. Casual comments. Little dismissals. 1,000 tiny cuts. You only noticed when one of them finally went deep enough. She took a bite of her food, swallowed, then added, "For what it's worth, Iris looks at you in a way Celine never did. Like you're a person with a whole world inside you, not a convenient piece of furniture." I laughed, but my eyes burned. A few days later, Iris texted. "I want to steal you for dinner. No spoilers. Just dress nice-ish." We drove to the other side of town, to a restaurant with soft lighting and a long waiting list. The kind of place that showed up in top 10 spots in the city articles. I recognized it immediately. Months earlier, I'd shown the website to Celine on my phone while we were half watching a show. "This place looks incredible," I'd said. "We should save up and go sometime." She'd glanced at the pictures for half a second and said, "It looks overpriced," before turning back to the screen. That had been the end of it. Now, as the host led us to a small corner table, I realized Iris had remembered. "You mentioned once you wanted to come here," she said, noticing my expression. I saved the name in my notes app like a complete nerd. I laughed, the sound a little shaky. I didn't even remember I mentioned it out loud. The menu was fancy enough to make my practical brain flinch. Iris didn't even blink. "Order what you want," she said. "We're celebrating." "Celebrating what?" I asked. She raised her glass when it arrived. "You," she said simply. "You choosing yourself. You starting over. That deserves dinner." We talked for hours. About work, about travel, about her grandmother's stubborn independence, about my brother's terrible taste in movies. She listened fully, with that same focused attention that made me feel like my thoughts were worth hearing. At some point, I realized, this was what it felt like not to be tolerated, but cherished. On the way home, my phone buzzed with a notification from a mutual friend, another cryptic post from Celine, this time about men who upgrade quickly and don't care about the damage left behind. Iris glanced over when she saw my jaw tense. "Do you want to talk about it?" she asked. "Not really," I said. Then, more honestly, I don't want her to be the loudest voice in my head anymore. "Good," Iris said. "Because she isn't the one living your life now. You are." For a while, that quiet confidence was enough. Then Celine showed up at my door. It was a Thursday evening. I was on the couch, halfway through making a grocery list I would probably ignore, when someone started knocking hard enough to make the frame rattle. I froze, then checked the peephole. Celine. Her hair was pulled back messily, and her jaw was set. My stomach dropped. I stepped back from the door, thinking. I had blocked her number. I hadn't responded to her posts. I had done everything I could to create distance that didn't involve involving authorities. And yet here she was, trying to collapse that distance by force. The knocking came again, louder. "Nolan, I know you're home," she called. "We need to talk." My heart pounded. I did not open the door. A second later, I heard keys in the hallway, followed by the familiar click of someone unlocking the main entrance to the building. Iris. She stepped into the apartment, immediately sensing the tension. "What's wrong?" she asked quietly. I nodded toward the door. "Celine's here." Something flashed in Iris's eyes, worry, then resolve. She walked to the door and spoke through it. "Celine," she said, voice calm but firm. "You need to leave." There was a beat of silence. Then Celine's tone changed from demanding to sharp. "Of course you're here," she said. "You really couldn't wait, could you?" "We're not doing this in the hallway," Iris said. "Nolan doesn't want to talk to you." "He can say that himself," Celine snapped. "Or is he hiding behind you now?" I took a breath, stepped closer, and raised my voice enough to be heard. "I don't want to talk, Celine," I said. "Please go home." A long, brittle silence followed. Then, "You owe me a real conversation," she said, her voice cracking. "You can't just disappear and pretend 5 years didn't happen." "I'm not pretending they didn't happen," I answered. "I'm choosing not to relive them. I've already said what I needed to say." Her voice sharpened again. "So that's it? You're running away from the mess you made?" Iris spoke before I could respond. "If you don't leave now, we're calling the police," she said. There was no hesitation in her tone. "This isn't okay, Celine. You can be hurt. You can be angry. You can get help. But you can't camp out at his door." For a second, I thought Celine might push it. I heard her hand on the knob, felt the faintest pressure like she might try to force it. Iris didn't move. "Last warning," Iris said quietly. "Go home." Celine exhaled loudly, a small, frustrated sound, then her footsteps stomped down the hallway. A moment later, the main building door closed with a dull thud. Inside the apartment, my hands were shaking. Iris turned and crossed the room in a few quick steps. "Hey," she said softly, putting her hands on my shoulders. "You're okay. She's gone." I let out a long breath I hadn't realized I was holding. "I hate that it came to this," I said. "I didn't want to be the person who blocks and threatens to call the police." "You're not that person," she replied. "You're the person who tried every quiet, respectful boundary first." She didn't listen. Later that week, Lorraine called. "I heard she went to your place," she said without greeting. Her voice carried an exhaustion that went beyond one incident. "I'm so sorry, Nolan." She told me she just wanted closure. I told her that wasn't hers to demand. I sat down at my tiny kitchen table. "It's okay," I said. "I mean, it's not, but I'm handling it." "I want you to know something," Lorraine said. "We're having a small party for Callum's birthday this weekend. I'd like you and Iris to be there. Celine won't be." I told her she's not invited until she can respect basic boundaries. My chest tightened. "You don't have to cut her out of things for me." "I'm not cutting her out," she said. "I'm asking her to face consequences." "That's different. And I'm telling you that your safety and peace matter in this house too." At the party, it was impossible to ignore the empty space where Celine usually sat. For years, she'd been the loudest voice in any room, laughing, complaining, telling stories. Now there was a quiet pocket of air where that energy used to be. Strangely, it felt calmer. Iris and I walked in together, holding hands. Lorraine hugged us both, then pulled me aside long enough to say, "Thank you for coming. It means a lot that you still feel comfortable here." Callum wandered over later with a plate of cake. He shifted his weight awkwardly before speaking. "I'm sorry it took me so long to say anything," he said. "About how she talked about you. I should have called it out sooner." "You were her brother," I said. "It's complicated." He nodded. "It is. But complicated doesn't mean impossible. I'll remember that next time she starts rewriting history." Grandma Coralie patted the spot beside her on the couch and made me sit. "You still bringing me tea at all these gatherings?" she asked. "Of course," I said. "Good," she replied. "I prefer my constants." Iris laughed from across the room when she heard that. Later that night, when she and I were back at my place, surrounded by the small mess of two people gradually merging their routines, she looked around and said, "This feels temporary." I glanced at the half-assembled bookshelf. "Because of the boxes?" "Because this is your in-between space," she said. "Not the place you stay." The words were gentle, but they hit somewhere deep. "Do you want to stay?" I asked. "Not here, exactly. But with me?" She looked at me like I'd asked if the sky was staying blue. "Yes," she said. "Very much." The next week, we started looking for apartments together. We avoided Celine's part of town. Not because we were afraid of seeing her, exactly, but because we wanted our life to be built on something other than dodging the past. We toured places with strange layouts, with noisy neighbors, with staircases that felt like safety hazards. We laughed about broken blinds and oddly painted accent walls. Then we stepped into a place that made both of us go quiet. It was a two-bedroom in a newer building with a staffed front desk and security cameras in the lobby. The kitchen was modern, the living room bright, the bedrooms big enough to feel like more than storage. We stood in the empty living room, sunlight spilling across the floor. "Feels like a blank page," Iris said. "A very expensive blank page," I said, looking at the rent. She smiled and pulled her phone out. "I'm not asking you to match me dollar for dollar," she said. "We can split it based on what we make. Like partners, not roommates." She had a whole spreadsheet ready, our incomes, average costs, fair splits. It was practical and thoughtful in a way that felt as intimate as any romantic gesture. With Celine, everything had been split strictly 50-50ths, even when she made more than I did. She treated it like proof that we were equal, but it had always felt like a quiet way to maintain control. With Iris, finances felt like teamwork. We applied that night. When the approval email came 3 days later, I read it 3 times to be sure. We moved in with the help of Callum, who carried boxes like he was trying to burn off years of watching silently. Lorraine brought a housewarming gift, a set of soft towels and a card that said, "For your new start. I'm proud of you." I kept the card in the top drawer of my nightstand. That first night, we ate pizza on the floor, surrounded by boxes. It felt nothing like the first nights I'd shared with Celine in our old place. There was no unspoken timeline hanging over us, no sense of waiting for someone to decide if I was temporary or permanent. Iris fell asleep with her head on my shoulder, the half-built bookshelf leaning against the wall like a promise. For the first time in a long time, the word home didn't feel like something I was pretending to have. It felt real. Celine still posted occasionally. Vague, sad quotes. Occasional sharp jabs about people who move on at the speed of light. Mutual friends told me she'd started seeing a therapist. One of them mentioned she was dating someone new, someone who reminded her of Elias, they said in a half-joking way. I didn't stalk. I didn't dig. I let the information sit at the edge of my awareness, important only in how it meant she was no longer staring solely in my direction. Life, slowly, was rearranging itself around a new center. One evening, as Iris and I argued good-naturedly about where the couch should go, I realized something simple and enormous. Justice didn't always look like dramatic revenge. Sometimes it looked like a quiet living room, a fair lease, a partner who actually asked, "What do you want?" and listened to the answer. I hadn't taken anything from Celine by leaving. I had just stopped letting her take everything from me. For months after we moved in together, our apartment finally stopped looking like a storage unit and started feeling like a home. The bookshelf was upright and actually attached to the wall instead of leaning. The kitchen cabinets had a system only Iris understood, but I pretended I did too. Our shoes piled up by the door in a way that would have driven Celine crazy, but somehow it just made me smile. One evening, as we sat on the floor surrounded by half-wrapped picture frames, Iris looked around and said, "We should have people over. To, make it official." "Official?" I asked, taping the back of a frame. She nodded. "A house isn't really alive until other people have seen you in it. Let's invite the people who matter. Your friends. My family. The ones who stuck around." The idea made my stomach flutter with a mix of nerves and warmth. "A small dinner," she added quickly. "Not a huge thing. Just a celebration that we landed here. Together." So we planned it. We invited Mira and a couple of co-workers I'd grown close to. Callum and Lorraine, of course. Grandma Coralie if she felt up to it. A few of Iris's cousins. We didn't invite Celine. Not because we wanted to punish her. Because it would have been cruel to both of us. The night of the dinner, Iris tore through the kitchen like a storm of competence, cooking, tasting, swearing softly at a sauce that wasn't thickening the way she wanted. I set the table, adjusted chairs, triple-checked we had enough glasses. "You're fussing," she teased, seeing me align a fork for the third time. "I want it to be good," I said. "For you. For everyone." She paused, then stepped close and straightened a plate I hadn't even noticed was crooked. "It's already good," she said. "We're doing this together." That was the part one always wanted. People began to arrive around 6. Coats piled up on our bed. The apartment filled with voices, laughter, the sound of someone overreacting to a board game in the corner. Mira pulled me aside at one point, drink in hand. She looked me over and shook her head with a small smile. "What?" I asked. "I've never seen you this relaxed," she said. "With Celine, you were always slightly on edge. Like you were waiting for a test you hadn't studied for. With Iris, you just exist. It suits you." Across the room, Iris threw her head back laughing at something Callum said. She caught my eye and gave a small, private smile meant just for me. The difference felt so obvious I wondered how I'd ever mistaken one for the other. Later that evening, after dinner dishes were stacked in the sink and people were drifting between the living room and the balcony, I found a quiet moment with Lorraine. She stood near the window, watching Iris talk to my co-workers with easy gestures. "She's happy," Lorraine said softly. "I can see it all over her." "So am I," I replied. She looked at me, eyes warm. "I was afraid, at first," she admitted. "That loving you would mean I was betraying my daughter. Then I watched the way you and Iris treat each other. With gentleness. With respect. It's not a betrayal. It's a correction." "A correction?" I repeated. "To how love is supposed to look," she said. "I wish Celine had figured it out with you. But since she didn't. I'm glad you found someone who values you like this." There was sadness in her voice, but not resentment. It felt like standing in a space where grief and acceptance could coexist. After everyone left, the apartment looked like a small hurricane had passed through, empty cups, a few forgotten scarves, a plate of cookies nobody had touched but everyone had complimented. We collapsed together on the couch. Iris tucked her feet under my leg and leaned into my shoulder. "Do you realize," she said, "this was our first all-families gathering that didn't end in shouting or someone storming out?" I laughed. "Don't jinx it. We still have holidays ahead of us." "True," she said. "But it feels like we've turned a corner. The drama isn't the main event anymore." Her words lodged deep in my chest. For years, I'd unconsciously accepted that big emotional upheaval was a sign of meaning. Now I was learning that quiet stability could be just as profound. A few days later, Lorraine called me. "We're doing Thanksgiving at my house this year," she said. "Just like always. I want you and Iris there. I also want you to know," she sighed, "Celine will be there too." My stomach tightened. "Okay. I've set some clear rules," she went on. "She knows she is not to use the holiday as a stage for grievances. She's been in therapy. She's calmer. I'm not promising it will be perfectly comfortable, but I won't let it turn into last time." I appreciated the honesty more than any promise of perfection. "I'll talk to Iris," I said. "If we come, we reserve the right to leave early." "You do," she said firmly. "And if anything starts, I will walk you to the door myself." On Thanksgiving morning, Iris found me staring at the calendar like it might change the date if I looked hard enough. "Second thoughts?" she asked, handing me a mug of coffee. "Third and fourth," I admitted. "But I don't want to avoid every room she's in for the rest of my life. That gives her too much power." "We go," Iris said. "We stay as long as it's bearable. We leave if it's not. That's all." We arrived to the familiar smell of turkey and rosemary, the murmur of football commentary drifting from the living room. Coats piled on the same old hooks. Children's voices rose from the hallway as cousins chased each other with toy swords. Celine was on the couch beside her grandmother, handing her a small plate. She glanced up as we walked in. For a second, our eyes met. There was no anger there this time. Just weariness and something that might have been regret. She looked away first. Eric, one of Iris's other cousins, swept us into the kitchen with exaggerated enthusiasm, pressing drinks into our hands and talking loudly about anything that wasn't family drama. Gradually, the knot in my stomach loosened. Through it all, Iris remained a steady presence at my side. She didn't grip my hand possessively or ask if I was okay every 5 minutes. She just stayed close enough that I could feel her there whenever my mind started spiraling. During dinner, Celine sat at the far end of the table. She passed dishes and made small talk with the cousins near her. We existed in the same space like people who shared a past but not a present. It was more tolerable than I'd dared hope. After the meal, as people drifted into smaller groups, Lorraine found me near the hallway. "She wants to talk to you," she said. "But only if you agree." I told her it's your decision, not hers. I knew who she was. My heart started pounding. I looked over Lorraine's shoulder and saw Celine standing near the back door, hands tucked into her sleeves, expression unusually careful. For a moment, I wanted to say no. I wanted to stay in the safe bubble I'd built and not let old pain in. Then another part of me, the one that liked things finished, not left hanging, spoke up. "I'll talk," I said. 10 minutes. Outside. The cold air on the back porch hit like a reset button. Celine stood with her arms crossed loosely, staring at the yard. For a second, she looked like the young woman I'd first fallen for, fierce, restless, softer than she let on. "Thanks for stepping out," she said quietly. Lorraine asked, I replied. "I trust her judgment." She huffed a small, humorless laugh. "That makes one of us some days." Silence stretched between us. For the first time since the breakup, it didn't feel like a rope being pulled, it felt like a space where something might be laid down. "I've been mad at you for a long time," she said finally. "Longer than was fair. I told myself you abandoned me. That you chose the convenient option and didn't care what it cost me." I said nothing. There was more. I could feel it. "My therapist suggested I try telling the story without making myself the hero," she went on. "It was unpleasant." She looked down at her hands. "The truth is, I treated you like a backup. I talked about Elias like he was some epic love and you were the comfortable couch I'd crash on until he invited me somewhere better. I knew, on some level, that it was cruel. I did it anyway." Her voice wavered. "When you left," she said, "I convinced myself you had betrayed me. It was easier than admitting I'd been doing that to you for years. When you started dating Iris, it forced me to see how quickly you became someone else's, only, instead of, just enough. That hurt. It also made something very clear." She looked up now, meeting my eyes. There was no fire in her gaze, only exhaustion and sincerity. "You were right to leave," she said. "I hate saying it out loud. But you were. I forced you into a role nobody deserves, then got angry when you refused to stay there." I breathed out slowly. "I didn't leave to hurt you," I said. "I left because staying would have kept hurting me." "I know," she replied. "Now, I do." We stood in silence for a moment, the crisp air making our breath visible. "I'm seeing someone," she said after a while. "His name is Jonah. He doesn't feel like a replacement for some past fantasy. That's new for me. He calls me out when I'm unfair. That's new too. I'm glad, I said, and surprised myself by meaning it. I'm not asking to be friends, she added quickly. I don't think that's realistic. But I am asking, she hesitated. Can we at least not dread being in the same room? We share people we both love. I don't want every future holiday to feel like a courtroom. I thought of Iris, of Lorraine, of Grandma Coralie's tired smile. I thought of the family dinners Greg and I had started to enjoy again, the way tension had slowly been replaced by something closer to normal. I can do that, I said. I'm not carrying anger anymore. Just memories. And they're getting quieter. She nodded, eyes shining. That's more than I deserve. Thank you. We went back inside separately. Iris looked for me as soon as I stepped into the dining room, her eyes scanning my face. You okay? She asked later, when we sat alone in our car in the driveway. I think so, I said. It wasn't easy. But it felt necessary. She squeezed my hand. I'm proud of you. Not for talking to her, specifically. For facing all of this instead of running from it. I looked down at our joined hands, her thumb tracing slow circles over my skin. For the first time, my past and my present felt like chapters in the same book instead of two separate lives I was trying to live at once. Weeks passed. Life slid back into its gentle, reliable rhythm, work, dinners, Netflix shows we claimed we'd only watch one episode of and then binged anyway. But something had shifted in me. I found myself thinking less about escaping bad situations and more about building good ones. The difference was subtle but profound. One Friday evening, Iris came home later than usual, dropping her bag on the counter with a little more ceremony than necessary. I need you to dress nice, she said. Like, actually nice. Shirt with buttons. Shoes that aren't sneakers. That sounds dangerous, I said. What's the occasion? You'll see, she replied. And no, I'm not giving hints. An hour later, we were in a rideshare heading toward the nicer part of town. My heart had started doing that familiar nervous thing, the same rhythm it had when I'd walked into Lorraine's kitchen that first time alone. We pulled up in front of the cafe where Iris and I had had our first coffee. The one with too many plants and chairs that wobbled if you weren't careful. This is where we go in sweatshirts, I said. Not button-downs. Tonight it's upgraded, she said. Humor me. Inside, a small, reserved sign sat on the table by the window where we'd first sat all those months ago. 2 drinks already waited there, a regular latte and the oversweet one I always pretended was too much, while finishing every drop. We sat. My pulse picked up. I've been thinking, she said, folding her hands around her cup. About how love has shown up in your life. My throat went dry. Okay. You spent years with someone who treated you like an option, she said. Then you left, which took a lot more bravery than people realize. You took a risk on me, even though it made family gatherings complicated and messy. She smiled a little. You chose yourself, and then you chose us. That shouldn't be rare. But it is. I could feel my heart climbing higher in my chest with each word. So, Nolan, she said softly, standing up. I barely registered her moving until she was on one knee beside our old table, pulling a small box from her pocket. My breath caught. I don't want you to ever wonder again if you're temporary, she said. I want you to know, every day, that you are the person I choose now and in every version of the future I can imagine. You're not my backup. You're not my for now. You are my partner. My home. My favorite decision. She opened the box. Inside was a simple ring, subtle, classic, nothing flashy, but it hit me harder than any diamond could have. It felt like a symbol not just of romance, but of fairness finally landing on my side of the scale. Nolan Hart, she said, eyes shining, will you marry me? I laughed and choked up at the same time. You beat me to it, I managed. I've been trying to figure out how to ask you for weeks. Then I saved you the trouble, she said, voice shaking. Yes, I said. It came out rushed, full, certain. Yes. Of course yes. The few other customers in the cafe started clapping. The barista wiped his eyes a little too dramatically and shouted, he said yes, which made Iris laugh in relief. She slid the ring onto my finger, hands trembling. It fit perfectly. Later, walking home hand in hand, I kept lifting my hand to look at it, the metal catching light from street lamps. Years ago, I had imagined this moment happening with someone else, in a different life. Now, all I could think was, thank God it didn't. This proposal felt nothing like an audition finally resulting in a callback. It felt like 2 people deciding, openly and simultaneously, yes. You. No more waiting to be upgraded. No more wondering which role I played in someone's story. With Iris, I knew. I was the leading man. Not the stand-in. Word traveled faster than we could tell it. By the time we got home that night, my phone was buzzing with messages, some from people we hadn't even called yet. Mira was the first we dialed intentionally. She screamed so loudly I had to move the phone away from my ear. About time, she said. I was halfway to buying my own ring and proposing on your behalf. My parents, when we called them, were quieter but just as emotional. My mom asked Iris 3 separate times if she was sure she wanted to join this strange family, each time laughing through tears. Lorraine cried openly on the phone. I've wanted this for you for a long time, she said. Not just marriage, this kind of marriage. One where both people show up. Even Grandma Coralie, when Iris called her to share the news, said, it's about time someone asked him properly. We were still riding that warm tide of congratulations when the part I'd been quietly dreading arrived. I should tell Celine, I said to Iris one morning over coffee. Before she hears it from someone else. Iris nodded. Do you want me to do it? Or Lorraine? I appreciate that, I said. But I think it should come from me. Short and simple. I wrote a single message. I wanted you to hear it from me. Iris and I are engaged. I hope life continues to move in a good direction for you, too. I stared at it for a full minute before hitting send. No answer came that day. Or the next. 3 days later, I got a reply. Congratulations. I mean that. I hope you're as good to each other as you were to me. I didn't know what to do with it then. I'm trying to do better now. There was no bitterness at the edges. Just something that felt like a bandage placed over an old wound, not to erase the scar, but to keep it from reopening. I showed the message to Iris. She read it, nodded once, and said, that feels right. Planning the wedding was both more complicated and more peaceful than I expected. Complicated because our guest list included people like Celine and her new partner, Jonah. Peaceful because, for the first time in my life, wedding planning didn't feel like pushing a boulder uphill alone. Iris had opinions. Real ones. About food, music, venue, size. She didn't say, whatever you want, to avoid conflict. She said things like, I'd prefer outside, but I can be persuaded, or I don't really care about the cake as long as there's something chocolate. We picked a small venue with a courtyard and a cozy reception space. Maybe 70 guests. Enough to feel full, not enough to feel lost. Big weddings are beautiful, Iris said, looking over the contract, but I don't need a crowd to prove we're serious. I just want our people. Our people, I repeated, testing the phrase. It felt good. Solid. When we sat down to make the seating chart, Iris paused over one pair of names. Do we invite them? She asked quietly. Who? I leaned over. Celine and Jonah, she said. My therapist says avoidance isn't always peace. Sometimes it's just fear in a different outfit. I thought about it. Really thought. Do you want them there? I asked. Not just, can you tolerate it, but do you actually want that closure? Iris chewed her lip. I don't want Celine erased from my life story, she said. She's my cousin. She hurt me too, in her own way. But she's still part of the roots. I think, inviting her is my way of saying she doesn't have to be the villain forever. And if she says no? I asked. Then that's her choice, Iris said. Our job is to be clear about who we are now. We sent the invite. 2 weeks later, an RSVP came back with both their names and a simple, will attend. No note. No dramatic add-on. Just a yes. Tessa, my friend from college, asked if I would stand as her man of honor at her own wedding a few months later. You helped me rethink what I accept, she said over coffee. I watched you walk away from almost love and find the real thing. It gave me courage to stop dating people who made me feel like I was asking too much just by wanting to be equal. It was still strange, sometimes, realizing the ripples of my private decisions had reached other people's lives. Lorraine insisted on throwing us a combined shower. I waited years for an excuse to host something like this for you, she told me. I'm not skipping it just because the path here was complicated. The day of the shower, my worlds collided, work friends, my brother and his wife, Iris's cousins, even a few of Celine's aunts who had always treated me kindly and made it clear their affection wasn't conditional. I braced myself for awkwardness. Instead, the emotions in the room felt surprisingly simple. Happy. People ate, laughed, watched us open gifts, made jokes about how many kitchen tools 2 people really needed. Near the end, Grandma Coralie asked me to come to the kitchen. She sat at the table, Kane leaning against the wall nearby. I watched you for a long time, she said. First with Celine, now with Iris. I smiled. I hope the second one looks better. It does, she said. But here's the thing, your kindness was always there. Your patience was always there. You didn't suddenly become a better man when you met Iris. You just stopped pouring those parts of yourself into someone who treated them like tap water. Her words hit me hard. You are not lovable now because someone good loves you, she said. You were lovable all along. The right person just noticed. The knot in my throat made it hard to answer, so I just nodded. The wedding day came on an early autumn afternoon, the kind where the air is crisp but the sun is still warm. I stood in a small room with my brother and two close friends, adjusting a tie that refused to sit straight. My hands shook, not from doubt, but from the weight of the moment. Breathe, my brother teased. She's definitely still out there. I checked. When the music started and I stepped into the courtyard, the sight that greeted me almost knocked the breath from my lungs. Rows of chairs, filled with faces from every part of my life, friends, family, co-workers, people who had known me when I had bad hair and worse decisions. At the front, a simple arch decorated with greenery and white flowers. Iris appeared at the end of the aisle, arm linked with Lorraine's. Her dress wasn't extravagant. It was soft, flowing, unmistakably her. Her eyes locked onto mine almost immediately. There was no movie-style blur. No slow motion. Everything felt hyperreal. Every sound, every color, every tiny expression on her face. When she reached me, Lorraine kissed her cheek, then mine. Take care of each other, she whispered. That's all that matters. The ceremony was short on purpose. We didn't want a performance, we wanted a promise. We wrote our own vows. Iris went first. You spent years being told, in words and actions, that you were good enough for now, she said, voice steady but thick. You learned to make yourself smaller so you wouldn't scare someone away. I want to spend the rest of our lives proving to you that you never had to shrink. Not for me. Not for anyone. She took a breath, eyes shining. I promised to listen when it would be easier to assume, to choose honesty when hiding would be more comfortable, and to never let you wonder where you stand with me. You are not my bridge between versions of myself. You are my home. Then it was my turn. You showed up in the middle of my mess, I said, my voice shaking just enough to make me mad at myself. You didn't try to fix the story. You just sat in it with me until I was ready to write a new chapter. I smiled, remembering our first coffee, the way she'd offered 2 drinks without assuming. I promised to treat you not as the person who rescued me, I went on, but as the person I choose every day. To argue with you kindly. To tell you the truth when it's hard. To support your dreams, even when they scare me. And to never, ever turn you into an option while I chase a fantasy. We exchanged rings. Simple bands. Nothing heavy. Just enough to feel like a permanent reminder whenever our hands brushed. You may kiss, the officiant said. We did. People cheered. Somewhere in the crowd, Mira shouted, finally, which made everyone laugh through their tears. At the reception, I spotted Celine and Jonah sitting at a table near the back. They looked fine. Comfortable. When our eyes met, she raised her glass in a small, quiet toast. No theatrics. No lingering stares. Later, she approached with Jonah at her side. Congratulations, she said. It was a beautiful ceremony. Thank you, I replied. I'm glad you came. She nodded. So am I. She turned to Iris. You look happy, she said. Really happy. Hold on to that. Don't let old habits ruin it. Mine or yours. Iris smiled, gentle but firm. We're learning, she said. Jonah shook my hand. I've heard a lot about you, he said. All of it respectful, eventually. We laughed. It loosened something in my chest I hadn't realized was still tight. They left early, giving us space. It felt like the right balance between acknowledging the past and not letting it overshadow the present. Our honeymoon was a modest trip, nothing exotic, but perfect. A small rented cabin near a lake, a few simple hikes, too much hot chocolate, board games we both took way too seriously. One night, sitting on the porch wrapped in blankets, Iris rested her head on my shoulder. Do you ever think about how close you came to staying where you were? She asked quietly. Yes, I said. All the time. Do you regret any of it? She asked. Any part of the way this went? I thought of the nights lying awake beside Celine, wondering if I was asking too much. Of the conversation through the kitchen window. Of the first cup of coffee with Iris. Of the family dinner explosion. Of the proposal in the cafe. No, I said slowly. I don't. It hurt. A lot of it hurt. But it taught me what I could survive. And it led me here. To you. To this exact moment. I wouldn't trade it. She smiled. Good, she said softly. Because I don't want a version of you that didn't live through all of that. I want this one. The one who knows the difference between being tolerated and being loved. Back home, married life didn't feel like some magical transformation. We still argued about who forgot to buy milk. We still had long days and nights when we were too tired to talk. But there was a steadiness beneath it all. A shared understanding that neither of us was going anywhere over one bad conversation. We chose each other. Once at the altar. Every day after in quieter ways. Months later, on a random Tuesday, I was waiting in line at a coffee shop when my phone buzzed. It was a photo from Mira. She stood with her fiancé under a string of fairy lights, rings visible as they held up their hands. The message read. Thanks for reminding me I was allowed to want more. I smiled so hard the barista commented on it. That night, as Iris and I cooked dinner together, moving around each other with practiced ease, I thought back to the version of myself who had stood frozen in Daria's kitchen, listening to his future being downgraded to "for now." If I could talk to him, I'd say this. You are not the role someone else assigns you in their unfinished story. You are allowed to leave when someone tells you, through words, neglect, or 1,000 small dismissals, that they see you as temporary. You are allowed to find a love that feels like justice and peace, not confusion and competition. You are allowed to be somebody's only, not their until. I looked at Iris across the counter, her hair pulled back, her face lit by the kitchen light and the open fridge. She glanced up, caught me staring, and smiled. What? She asked. Nothing, I said. Then, honestly, everything. I'm just grateful. She crossed the kitchen and kissed my forehead. Me too, she said. Our story wasn't perfect. It was complicated, messy, built on difficult choices and painful truths. But it was ours. Chosen. Not settled for. And in the end, that made all the difference. Thank you for watching the video, like it if you watched the video to the end and don't forget to subscribe. Have a nice day.